Thanks everybody for having me, and thanks to Jarrett for inviting me. Journalists don't get to do this very often, so it's actually quite fun. Two caveats I'd like to say off the bat. First, I'm just a reporter. I'm not a real expert on women in politics. I've just covered a lot of women in politics in Manitoba specifically. And as Dr. Grace said, I think Manitoba is this weird little bubble of women in politics. I've talked to friends in Ottawa and Alberta, other political reporters, and we do have this this sort of supercharged situation in Manitoba in the last several years, where so many women are doing big jobs. Which brings me to my first myth. I have three myths. The last one's a bit controversial, so I'll just say that up front. The first myth I think that is out there is that women aren't political animals. That somehow they don't have the cojones, they're not tough enough to handle the real sort of brutal work of politics. I think for so many years, sort of the politicos, the Blackberry boys, all the backroom guys have been guys. And I think that's changing, especially in Manitoba. I think as a reporter, more and more, in fact, I would almost say, not quite exclusively, but definitely the majority of the people I go to for insider background stuff, political strategy, analysis, who's going to run where, who might win, that kind of stuff, are women. And I think that, again, is somewhat of an anomaly in Manitoba, but I think there are more and more women who are doing those kinds of really sort of serious backroom campaign managers, strategic people, pollsters, policy folks, not just candidates, but the movers and shakers behind the scenes that make things happen. I was thinking about what to say here. I was remembering at the NDP convention, I had the really fun job of only figuring out who might be in cabinet after Greg Selinger won the NDP leadership. And I remember cruising around the floor of the convention, and the only people I talked to were women, almost exclusively. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a woman journalist and maybe I have more of a rapport, but the people that I found were the most candid and the most thoughtful were women. And there's a couple of obvious examples. There's a woman that's running the federal Tory campaign right now. There's a woman running the provincial Tory campaign. The same woman ran Sam Cates's campaign. Not that the City Hall is a particularly friendly place for women right now, but there are examples in Manitoba and beyond Manitoba where really serious backroom jobs are being done by women. Second myth, you can't be a mom and be a politician. I hear this all the time when there's sort of candidate speculation. Oh, she has kids, she probably can't run or won't run. And I think this is I think it's bogus, first of all. And I also think that excuse is kind of a subtle way of perhaps excluding women from being considered possible candidates and being sort of part of that momentum that grows around a person, that encourages them to run, helps them fundraise, goes door knocking for them, that kind of momentum that develops around a possible candidate early on. There's so many examples of why this is not true. Judy Washington-Solis has 2 kids, I think, one with special needs. I think like 2 or 3 days before Leona Aglukkaq became health minister, she had a baby. There are so many examples of women in politics with kids. And there's always that Ottawa piece of it, right? You can't go to Ottawa and be a mom. It's just been disproven so many times. Having said that, I think that, as we all know, the burden of motherhood and housework obviously falls more heavily on women, and that's still a big challenge, I think, for women, but it should never be used as an excuse to preclude women from running. This is my controversial one, and I've been thinking about this one because of a lot of there's been sort of dueling columnists in BC lately about Christy Clark being the new premier. And 2 women columnists said, the elephant in the room is the fact that she's a woman, and this is gonna, it's gonna be tougher for her as a woman, and everybody's gonna nitpick what she wears, and talk about her, her haircuts and her clothes and that kind of thing. And then, unfortunately, it doesn't really help my cause exactly, but there's a male columnist in the Globe who said, that's bunk. Maybe 10 years ago we might have spent time nitpicking how women look as politicians, but any serious political journalist is not going to waste time on that crap, basically. I agree with them. I think about, and I know this is sort of an instinctive criticism of the media, that we spend too much time commenting on how women look instead of their, you know, their policy options, how well versed they are, you know, with different sort of policy, how well they campaign, all that kind of stuff. And I actually think, I've been thinking about all the comments I've made in the paper and on my blog about how people look. And the big one, I did comment on a woman's haircut during the council campaign, and I got excoriated in our comments section for it. But I also made fun of Ron Lemieux's ties once in the paper. So I think we actually comment on politicians, male and female, on a fairly equal footing. And the other thing I want to say about that is, even though we might wish it were different, looks matter. Image matters. Sort of how your charm, your grace, what you wear, that stuff matters. That's why in newspapers every time there's a leaders debate, we do a feature about whose tie, you know, was what color and what it signifies. There's a lot of thought in political campaigns that goes into the image, and to pretend somehow that this doesn't matter and that it's a topic that's off limits for political reporters talking about women is naive, fundamentally. So I think I think we should have some latitude to discuss image when it comes to female politicians. I don't want to talk about whether somebody's gained weight or not, or ridiculous things like that, but that stuff does matter. So those are my 3 myths. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much.